Good evening, you guys, and welcome to another edition of Longevity Kitchen with me, Julie Gibson Clark. If you watched my recent episode on making a tuna salad, one of the things I included in there was some preserved lemons. And I thought, yeah, I should teach you how to make these because, you know, just one more little probiotic food to put in your arsenal of flavor bombs, right? Now, I should warn you, there's not as much probiotics in this. The microbial diversity is pretty limited because it's kind of a high salt, high acid environment, but there are some, but it's, you know, it's not in like a kimchi, it's not like a yogurt or anything like that, but there are some, and the flavor is so worth it. Plus, there's some other benefits to eating the lemon peel. So let's go over some of those. So in the peel, there is these oils, and you can kind of smell them if you just kind of take your fingernail and scratch the lemon, or if you've ever used a zester and you kind of see this like little sparks of things flying, that's the oil in here called, buckle up because I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this, but limonene. And that has anti-inflammatory benefits as well as it's good for your digestive health. So lemon, the peel itself is rich in bioflavonoids, hesperidin and naringin. And again, please give me some grace on the pronunciation because I am not a scientist, if you haven't guessed. So I've only read these things, and I have read about hesperidin. Apparently these are really good for cardiovascular health, anti-inflammatory properties and cardiovascular health. So that's kind of cool. And of course, all working well for your digestive health. And last but not least, the peel has pectin in it. And pectin is a soluble fiber that will feed your healthy gut bacteria. So that with the minimal probiotics that are in here, and maybe you have, you know, some other probiotic food with it, now you're creating obviously a happier environment in your gut, which we all want to be doing. So, truth be told, the reason I started making these things, this is many moons ago, God, it's like 30 years ago now, I was served a martini with a preserved lemon in it, and I just thought, holy moly, this is cool. This is different, you know, it was different than the olive. It's salty like the olive. They are very salty, but then it's just got that sour lemon. It has a lemony punch, and it's really fun. So I don't drink anymore, but I do use my preserved lemons like I did in my tuna salad. It's delicious in a polenta, if you ever make polenta. Any kind of rice dish, if you just want to like up the ante, that's a great thing to do with it. The other thing I do is I will whirl them up. I'll take like one of the lemons, you'll see when we're finished here, and I'll whirl them up in a food processor. So now they're all like, you know, it's like almost like a paste, and you can make a salad dressing. So you just mix it with some honey and some olive oil, and now you have this delicious preserved lemon salad dressing, which is, again, super good for your gut health. Or you can take that paste and you can mix it into hummus, or you can even put just a little bit like on a sandwich, or, I mean, the possibilities are really endless. It's typically, I think it's a Moroccan dish, so you know, obviously goes very well with any kind of Middle Eastern dish, but you know, get creative with this. It's gonna be salty and sour, and just a huge amount of flavor in this tiny little piece. So it's definitely worth the effort. In fact, okay, so most of the effort tonight is actually going to go into washing the lemons, and let's talk about it. Now here, it's not Meyer lemon season, but those are probably the most ideal lemon to make with this, because the rind is just a little thinner. I've traditionally made it with Meyer lemons, but you can, and I have made it with just regular lemons, and they're perfectly fine. Just make sure, one, you get organic, because you know you're going to be eating the whole lemon, so you know you don't want to have it been sprayed with God knows what kind of chemicals they're using these days, sorry. But we're also, most of our effort tonight is going to go into washing these, because we just want to make sure, you can kind of see how, you know, they're sort of shiny. Well, they've got a little bit of wax on them. So we're going to use a baking soda paste and very hot water and wash these. Now, we are not going to be using all these. It's just such a beautiful bowl. Of course, I had to do that. And of course, I mean, you know, when you have a lemon dress and you're making preserved lemons, it must be done. It has to be worn. But I'm just going to use this tiny container, and you can decide, you know, how big of a container you have at home and what would fit, but I would encourage you to at least use 2 lemons, which is probably about what's going to fit in here, maybe 3. We might be able to, because we're really going to pack them in there. You'll see. And I think that's it. Yeah, Meyer lemons, wash the wax off of that. We'll want to make sure this has been washed in hot soapy water. If you really are concerned about it, you can dip it into boiling water. I've never found it to be a huge problem because it's such a salty brine. It's going to kind of kill off any molds. But if you are concerned about that, for sure you can dump it, pop it into some boiling water and make sure it's completely preserved. But I've never had a big problem with it. So basically we're going to wash these. We're going to cut them in a very special way. We're going to rub them with a ton of salt. We're going to smush them into this jar. And then we're going to put them on the counter. We're going to seal it, and we're going to put it on the counter for about anywhere between 1 and 4 weeks. I've been reading different things, and I know that I've always done 2 weeks, but I've seen other directions that say up to 4 or even 6 weeks on the counter. I've also seen directions that tell me 1 week on the counter and the rest in the fridge. So I'm going to let you sort of play around with that. I haven't noticed any major difference. So I thought this time around, I'm going to make it with 1 week on the counter, and then I'm going to put it in my fridge and then let it do the rest of its fermenting there. And then it can stay there for food safety people will tell you 1 year, okay? But these guys, I know for a fact they are well over a year old and they're fine. So I just watch for smells and mold. And again, it's your health. You got to do what's right for you. But why don't we get started? I've got my baking soda here. We're going to go over to the sink and we're just going to make a paste, hot water, and try to get off as much wax. And I'm only going to wash up 4 lemons because I don't think even 3 are going to fit in here, but we're going to try. Okay? All right. Okay, guys, let's wash the lemons. The first thing I'm going to do is fill this sink with really, really hot water. So I'm going to turn on my water, which is going to get noisy, and I'm going to wait till it gets super, super hot. And as soon as it's really, really hot, I'm going to plug up my sink. Now, you may need to use some plastic gloves. I just kind of have Teflon hands. And then I also have sitting here a little dish of baking soda, which I'm just going to use to make a paste around these things, and just kind of try to get off as much of the wax as I can. All right, here we go. It's going to get noisy. So now these guys are kind of floating on here, and like I said, it is very, very hot, and I'm just going to kind of take the baking soda from my bowl here and just rub it on. A little bit of water and a little bit of baking soda, and just try to gently rub off what I can of this wax. Now, you may have a different method, but I just feel like this is kind of safe, the safest method. You could use soap, but I don't know. I'm always worried about the soapy residue these days that they have so much smells in them, and maybe there's some oils in those soaps. So I don't know. I've always kind of just used this. So I'll just pop that back in there. Same thing. Just kind of make a nice little paste and gently scrub off as much wax as you can. Okay, we're going to just give those a final rinse. We'll just let them dry here for a second while we set everything else up. Okay, so here is what we are going to do. We're going to cut off, we're going to just do it lemon by lemon here. We'll cut off just the little tips on each side. Okay, just a little bit. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to cut down into the lemon. You don't want to cut it all the way in half. We're going to cut it down to about right there, okay? You want it to stay in one piece. So you've got that, and then you're going to just do the same thing at another 90-degree angle. Just like that. So now it's going to open up kind of like a flower. And we're going to pop it in here because we just need a little cover. But now we're going to take salt, and I've got some, now that's Himalayan sea salt. I bought that because this brand in particular is supposed to be low in microplastics. I don't know, but we really want to make sure we get that salt down in there. So just check your salt. You could use kosher salt. You could use a coarser sea salt. Would work just fine, okay? So, but we just want some salt in there. You can already see it's getting kind of juicy. There's gonna be a lot of salt in here. Just get that salt rubbed up against all the sides, okay? And then we're gonna kind of smush it into this jar. So just one second, just really wanna make sure that salt covers all the edges there. And then we're just gonna kind of smush it down, and we're gonna put another one in here. Now this gets, obviously your fingers get a little messy, but just I'm gonna take those off, and that is even quite optional to do that little step there, especially when you have the Meyer lemons. So, but again, you do wanna just go down, not to the very end, maybe like probably leaving an 1/8 or to like a 1/4 inch down there. Okay, and again, I'm just gonna open it up and, excuse me, pour in some salt and rub it all down the edges. Get it really deep in there. And then we're just gonna smush it up. Okay, and then we're gonna smush that in there. And what's gonna happen is over the next few hours, they're gonna start releasing a lot of their juices. But if you want to be done with it here, what you're going to need to do is cover it. Excuse me. You're going to need to cover it in lemon juice, because that is the way to prevent mold. Like any other fermented food, once it starts touching air, that's where you kind of get the mold problem. So you want to make sure it's completely covered in lemon juice, which is going to start releasing its own juices, and it's going to get softer, and you can push it down and even add another lemon. Okay, so that can be done. However, if time is of the essence and you want to be done now, what we can do is juice that lemon and just cover this and just make sure it's completely already covered in lemon juice, which will give you a lot extra lemony brine anyway that you can use for all kinds of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to do that method because I don't really want to bring you back here tomorrow to do that step. But if you have that kind of time, you definitely can. So we're going to cut that up, we're going to juice it and pop it over here. Okay, so cut this in half. We'll use our juicer. And again, we just don't do water. You really just want the lemon juice, okay? So even if you have to use several lemons, or like I said, you can just come back in an hour and these will be a lot more smushy and a lot more juicy, but I just kind of like to keep it pretty quick in the kitchen. So we might even need another lemon. No big deal. But this is where having like a fermentation weight, that if you just put that on there, it would weigh down in a little bit. And I may even add an extra tablespoon of salt just for good measure. Make sure we get a nice salty brine. Yeah, we're going to do an extra tablespoon of salt, and I need probably one more lemon because these will sink down. They won't really float up, but I want to make sure it's completely covered in lemon juice. So, okay, last little bit of lemon juice. Here we go. These guys are good and juicy. Okay, and then I'm just going to add another tablespoon of salt, because had we smushed it down and added another lemon instead of the lemon juice, we would have added that much salt. So I think we'll just do that. Okay. Then you do use the seal here, and this doesn't have the enzymatic activity like you see with a kimchi or any other fermented vegetable, okay? You just want to get that brine. And then what I'm going to encourage you to do is just open this up every so often, and probably shouldn't be using my fingers, use something more sterile, but they eventually will sink down and that liquid will become very brine-like, very syrupy. Let me show you so you can kind of see these. Again, these are like a year old, but so you can kind of see the liquid is quite thick and it's very, very salty, but it's a wonderful brine. Just add little bits if you want a little salty hit to something. Okay, so they will sink in there, and you just always want to make sure they stay submerged. So I think what I'm going to do, this isn't completely submerged, but what I'm going to do is come back here in about an hour and see if they've submerged or if I can smush them down, because again, they will sink eventually. But if I can't, then I'm going to put something to weight it down in there, and you could use a fermentation weight. Okay, so it was, you guys, so you can kind of see what we've done here. Super, super simple, right? We took that lemon, we cut down almost to the bottom, probably left about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch, then turned it perpendicular, did the same thing. So now the lemon opens like a flower, and then you're going to take a tablespoon of salt and just really rub that down onto all of the surfaces of the lemon, kind of close it back up, and then put it in one of these containers, any size container. And then what you want to do is just really smush that lemon down and make sure that ultimately these things are submerged in water, and in lemon juice, their own juice. Now these things will release a lot of their own juices here, and they're going to get a lot more smushy probably in the next even hour, but certainly in the next 24 hours. And there will be no bacteria building up in 24 hours, that's for sure. So you just want to kind of keep coming down there, coming in here and smushing it down and making sure it stays below the liquid. Okay, so in an hour I'm going to check these, and I'll probably put some form of fermentation weight. As you well know, I still don't have any, but if you have those, that's what you need to do here. We just need to submerge them in the liquid, and then it's going to sit on the counter for 1 to 6 weeks. I've read a lot of different directions on this, and in the past I have always done 2 weeks on the counter and then, you know, a year plus in the fridge. It will take you a while to use them up because it doesn't take much. I mean, these tiny little guys, or these guys, just, you cut off little pieces, and some people say you should only use the peel, and some people say you should use the peel and the little bit. Let's see if I've got one. Oh, here, I've got a piece right here. Some people say you shouldn't use any of the inside and that you only use the peel. But I have to say I disagree. I use the whole thing, especially when I make dressing from it. You're just gonna, you know, whirl that whole thing up in a blender or a food processor, mix it with some honey and some olive oil, and you are good to go. It's a beautiful salad dressing. So, and again, you can see it's very syrupy. This brine is going to get a lot more syrupy. So again, the only thing I'm concerned about here is keeping it submerged in the liquid. So I'm going to watch it over the next couple of hours. And why don't we check in with this next week and see how it's looking, and then decide whether we're going to put it in the fridge then, or if I'm going to let it go another week. I really don't know exactly what I'm looking for. I mean, I know I'm looking for a syrupy liquid, and I'm just making sure that these guys are getting soft enough that they're sort of sunk down on their own. Okay, see you in a week. Okay, you guys, hi. It's been 1 week since I made these, and I just checked them, and they are indeed ready after 1 week. What I realized was it's summertime. Duh, when I make them with the Meyer lemons, it's winter, and in winter my house is anywhere between like 60 degrees at the warmest, probably 78, and now the coolest my houses get is 78. So it goes from 78 to, gosh, on upwards of 83 degrees. So of course they are going to ferment faster. 1 week is plenty of time in the summer, but if you make them with the Meyer lemons, or your house is a bit colder where you live, you're just going to have to watch for what I'm about to show you. I'll bring you in here, but we're just looking for, you know, kind of a soft, smushy rind, and you just want this brine to kind of look a little syrupy. I mean, again, let me bring you in here and you'll see what I'm seeing. And then of course we are going to have to finish this up by making a concoction. Hello, like it's me. So no, I've already showed you how to use it with the tuna, and we've talked about some dishes to put it in, but let me just show you a quick drink that I make now that I can't drink martinis, but we can still make concoctions with them. So just one second, let me bring you in. Okay, why don't you take a look here. So this is what I ended up using as a fermentation weight, which are basically little cups you use when you make, when you make your wasabi and put your soy sauce in when you make sushi. So I want you to kind of see how this is kind of, it's obviously not just salt water, it's a little thicker than that. So it's a little syrupy, but what we're checking is how smushy are these, smushy, that's a technical term, how smushy are these rinds, and those rinds are very, very soft. So it is totally ready to go into the refrigerator, but that's exactly what you're looking for. So at your house, you're just gonna have to kind of pay attention to the outdoor temperature or the temperature of your kitchen. Again, one more time, you can kind of see how smushy that is. And it's still gonna need to ferment in the fridge. But it can stay in that fridge for, gosh, like I said, well over a year. See how it's also not really rising to the top? I'm still gonna keep this on it in the fridge. And that just makes sure everything stays below. But within a few weeks, within a few weeks, it will stay sunk all on its own without that weight. But for now, I'm just gonna leave that on there. So that's what you're looking for. Now, okay, you guys, let's make a concoction, because I don't know about you, but when I stopped drinking, I don't know, I didn't want life to become unfun. I mean, cocktails are so fun, but cocktails are out, so concoctions are in. They're kind of fun too, right? So here is a fun, simple, not only in how I make it, but simple tasting. It's kind of just like a little bit of a flavored sparkling water. And if anything, it kind of has, I'm not gonna go so far as to say it tastes like beer, but it's kind of in that family. It's veering towards beer because it kind of has, I'm gonna put some salty brine in it, and it just has a different flavor than just regular sparkling water. So very, very, very simple. You're gonna wanna take out some preserved lemon. You wanna get the bit, like this is the juicy bit and the rind, and I'm using about 1/8 of a lemon, okay? So I'm gonna use the rind too. Now, if you were to use this in a martini, you would just use the rind. You wouldn't use the inside juicy bit, but I'm gonna use both of those. And then I'm gonna put just a little bit of mint in here. Now, if you really wanted to get fancy, you could probably muddle this, like if you had a muddler with some ice, you know, but right now I'm just gonna put the ice over it. And that is really as like complicated as this is gonna get. And then we're gonna put, actually I think I'll do the brine. I'll do 1 teaspoon of the brine now, and then I'm gonna taste it and see if I wanna add another one. So this is just some sparkling water that I make at home here. I have one of those bubblers, which I highly recommend. It really does save a lot of time in faffing about with the bottles and bringing them home and then recycling them. And I don't know, I just find it a lot simpler. And I think I ran the calculations. It was like half as much as buying the bottles of sparkling water. And then of course you're saving. Now I do realize that, you know, you're keeping your water in a plastic bottle, but honestly, I would put that in there in the morning and it will be gone that night. So it really doesn't get to stay in there very long. So I'm not too worried about it. Anyway, let's give this a try. And I kind of like mine a little saltier. Yeah, I'm gonna add another teaspoon of brine. Now, the brine, again, it's like basically salted lemon juice. So it is very salty. If you have a problem with salt, then by all means, you're not adding that brine. But I'm in the sauna every day, and then I'm out walking in the Arizona heat. And every time I go to the doctor, they, you know, like to remind me that I'm very low in sodium. And I realize that. So I just add salt to everything and hope that it will get better the next time I get there. But anyway, cheers, you guys. Let's give this final sip here. Yeah, It tastes like the days of being on a beach in Mexico, having a beer with a lime in it. Maybe there's some tequila and salt involved as well. I mean, you know, I'm not gonna lie, that has happened in my life. It just doesn't happen anymore. But this is kind of in that flavor family. All right, I'm gonna go enjoy this. Cheers, you guys, and I really hope you make the preserved lemons. And if you do, let me know. And if you come up with something else, please let me know in the comments. Let us all know what kind of creative dishes that you have added this to or will be adding this to. Okay? All right, have a wonderful week. Good night.